evening and welcome to those who are viewing at home and to those in the audience. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Simsbury Board of Education. Today is February 25th, 2014. And with that, I would like to recognize in our audience here before us, we have a group of Boy Scouts from Troop 174, and they are here. Go ahead, give yourselves an applaud for being here. Great. And they are here, every year they do come, as the Boys Scouts are here for requirement for communication badge. Do I have that correct? Is that the correct badge? All right. And actually, I'm just going to put in a personal note. My son is an Eagle Scout from Troop 174, so I'm glad you're here. So welcome. With that, I would like to move on to public audience. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the board may do so. Please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Diana Yisley, 78 County Road.
Hello, Diana.
I'm here to address the board. I know that Mr. Curtis will respectfully submit an additional proposal this evening as requested by the Board of Finance on 0.5% increase to the budget. And I'm aware that 1.48% budget was submitted previous Board of Education meeting, as well as a 1% increase. I'm here to just give my opinion to the Board of Education, who I know did not request the 1% or the 0.5% budget increases. But I'm here to strongly recommend that the Board of Education really just only consider the 1.48% budget increase, as I do feel that a 1% or 0.5% increase will severely affect some of the programs and support that Mr. Curtis has proposed in the 1.48% budget increase, including technology and, of course, to the special education needs, specifically a staff member who oversees the entire program, which has been lacking over the last several years since the absence of Mrs. Janet Haley. We are remiss in not having someone who can oversee an entire program for kids who have very specialized needs according to their legal individualized education program. And it is something that is lacking, and I think would be beneficial to the district to have a person back on staff to oversee that type of program and potentially reduce the risk of mitigation or litigation and subsequent outplacement to private schools. So my it is just, I'm here to please strongly urge the Board of Education to recommend to the Board of Finance a 1.48% increase that is needed to keep our quality district for all students within our district, from preschool through 22 years old, as required by law for some students. I do feel like we want to keep our quality education for all students, and strongly, recommend that is your recommendation to the Board of Finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you for your support of us. Anyone else in the audience wishing to address the board may do so. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Marta Calleros. We recently relocated.
I'm sorry, for the record, can you also state your address?
4 Camille Lane
in
West Simsbury.
Thank you.
I have a daughter who has special needs, and I know how much the support and how much the costs have increased over the years. But I do believe that they need a stronger support while they are at school to be productive in the future. So I do strongly believe that the budget has to be enough to continue to provide the services that all these children need in order to have a better future and a more productive life later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you for your support. Anyone else wishing to address the board may do so. All right, seeing no further, we will move on to Board and Administrative Communications, and we will start with Jacob.
Well, good evening, everyone. Last Friday, we had the Battle of the Bands competition, which is one of the big events on the high school calendar each year. Congratulations to the winner, Paper Radio, and all of the outstanding individual performances. All of the bands were great, and it was a good time for everyone who attended. The athletic front, boys basketball had a narrow loss to Farmington last night, but it was a great turnout. And also congratulations to junior E.J. Crawford, who became the second person to hit 1,000 points this season after Allie Davis earlier in the year. Girls hockey has progressed in their league tournament. Boys wrestling won the CCC championship, and all winter sports are now beginning to head into the playoffs. And you should check the SHS website for all the schedules. The Trojan Leadership Academy began recently for both sports and club leaders, and it's in its second year. AP course registration has begun. And next week, I'm looking forward to, with the other student representatives from the board, to attending the CAVE Day on the Hill, and I'm sure Mrs. Tadone will give us more information in just a little bit. And on another note, from a number of students at the high school has been, after snow, in the state of the parking lot at times has caused problems for parking with cars all over the place and students who shouldn't be parking there. So I think that has definitely been something that I've heard from a number of students this year.
Good. Thank you, Jacob, for the report. Susan.
Just to say that poorly in your absence, I attended the legislative
Thank
breakfast. Could never stand up to your standards there, but yeah. But Matt and I were there, and our state rep John Hampton was there as well. It wasn't the best of turnouts, but it was okay. It was a tough morning.
Right, because this was the rescheduled breakfast.
It was the rescheduled, and it was icy and dicey as it was that morning as well. But a lot of conversation around, as you can imagine, Common Core and teacher evaluation, and just the heavy load everybody has trying to get everything in place, and a lot around how it's been rolled out. And,
Right.
It was very interesting. It was good to hear from everybody's points of view. Lots of superintendents. Matt spoke. I don't know if you want to add something, Matt, to what we heard, but
Yeah, I'll touch on it when we get to, yeah.
Good,
but
good,
it was. I was glad I was there.
good. Well, as you know, and you probably did heard that, we are in full swing in the legislative session at this moment, so,
Which definitely impacted the number of legislators who
Yes,
could attend because
yes.
meetings were going on while we were there. But the vice chair for the education committee was there
Good.
for the duration, so that was good.
Good.
He
Andrea?
got to hear everybody's comments and.
good.
I mean, the bulk of the conversation was around trying to paint a more accurate picture as to the challenges of implementation. Not evaluating each of the initiatives, but the consistent implementation challenges. And when you put forth multiple things at once, you end up having, problems with competing resources. Where are districts going to put their resources to support these multiple initiatives? So just trying to get legislators to better understand those challenges as they work forward in kind of advocacy role. But
Good.
I think a good morning and all.
Yeah.
Seems good.
Good. Far cry from last year. So, good. Thank you for attending.
Sure.
Todd? No. Chris?
Just a reminder that the curriculum committee is meeting this Friday at 7:30 at Tooten Hills, and our focus is going to be on the elementary school curriculum.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you for those on the curriculum committee. Mike?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Tara?
I just want to put out a reminder to everybody here and at home that Thursday at 5 at Simsbury High School, the Unified Theater will be putting on their annual production, which is really a wonderful, it's not a long production, but it's really wonderful, full of a lot of energy and music and song and acting. So it's a great event that is open and free to the public. I also went to the senior citizen dinner we had the other night, last night. When was that? Last night. Senior citizens came to the high school. A lot of students were there. They had dinner together, and then they went to the basketball game, which is a great event, and we've been doing it regularly. I think Lisa Hevner started it up, and she was there as well. A lot of people were there. It was wonderful. Neil was there. It was a fun night.
Right.
And it's nice to see the kids working with the adults, the seniors. It's wonderful.
Good. Was it well attended?
It was pretty well
Great.
attended
Great.
for winter and cold.
For winter cold. Good. Good.
Yeah.
Look forward to more. Thank
I'm
you.
all set.
Erin.
I'm all set.
Susan?
All set at this time.
Burke?
Just one item. I wanted to give a thanks to sort of the unsung heroes of our snow and ice process, Steve Twitchell and all of the senior building custodians, all of the staff that work in those buildings, as well as our custodial maintenance staff, keeping things going even though we were closed, just getting things ready in the parking lots, the walkways, and the roofs. So there was a lot of attention proactively for the last couple of weeks. Our staff were up on their roofs, making sure the drains were clear. Unfortunately, we were able to take advantage of that warm weather the end of last week. But I know that they've done a great job, and a lot of people don't realize when schools close that there's still a lot of activity there. So just want to give them a thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for keeping everything cleared. It's important. Matt?
Great. I just had the legislative breakfast
Yep.
update. I
Good.
think we covered that, so
We
I'm
did.
all set.
Very good. And I just would like to mention, as Jacob alluded to before, the Day on the Hill, the CABE Day on the Hill, is Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, the 5th. At the Capitol, so the 4 students and I'll be attending, and maybe some other board members will also be attending. But this is the day, the annual day that we have Board of Education members and students, are at the Capitol, and this is our day of advocacy with our legislators about the upcoming, or the session that we are presently in right now. So we're meeting with our legislators, talking about what is going on with the education reform and the upcoming bills that will be coming through Education Committee. So it will be a very big day, and as always, our 4 students hopefully will get on camera again as they had last year, and it'll be a very worthwhile day for all. So stay tuned to the 6 p.m. news. I believe it will be then. And also,
Say the 5th, I'm sorry.
it's the 5th.
Wednesday?
Wednesday. Yep, next Wednesday.
you.
I'm sorry, not this Wednesday, next Wednesday. And so that's going on. And then also Monday will be the hearing day for Education Committee. So I'll be testifying on Monday, as this is the 1 week, because it is a short session this year. We have to be done and hopefully pass the budget. The state has to pass the budget by May. So Wednesday will be an all-day session of hearings before Education Committee. So it's a very busy time legislatively up at the Capitol and in D.C., but more to come. All right, with that, we are on to Exhibit 1, Recommended Actions. Approval of minutes of the February 11th, 2014 meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. We are now on to information and reports, the 2014-15 Board of Education budgets.
Great.
And Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Lydia. I thought that tonight, in planning for tonight, my goal would be really to provide a bit of an information push, really think about where we were coming out of the last Board of Education meeting when I presented the 1.48% budget increase. And at that level of funding, we had quite a bit of discussion about feeling comfortable with how that number and the line items in that budget support moving our budget forward and really meeting the needs of our current students and our staff as we plan thoughtfully for next year. I thought a good place to start would be the Board of Finance meeting that many of us had an opportunity to attend on the 18th. And as you'll recall, at our last Board of Ed meeting, we decided it would be appropriate to request attendance at the Board of Finance meeting and voice a bit of concern with where we were with some of the scenarios they had asked us about. Prior to going before the Board of Finance on the 18th, we were requested to demonstrate the impact of what it would take to move the superintendent's budget to a 1%, which we took a look at our last meeting, but also a 0 and a -1. And we realized there were some new economic factors that had come before the town that we thought a reconsideration of those requests might be warranted. So I thought we had a good back and forth dialogue with the Board of Finance. They actually concurred that with the way the factors looked right now, and what I mean by that is the grand list growth, as well as a potential willingness to adjust their tax collection rate, that the scenarios of a 0 and a -1 weren't warranted, but asked that we still do demonstrate the impact of what a 0.5 would look like. What also became evident was, and the Board of Finance has collectively talked about a goal to keep the mill rate flat and hopefully not have a tax rate increase this coming year, that if the Board of Ed could come in right around a 1% increase, it would allow us to all accomplish that goal. And I think certainly a positive goal to have. We want to ensure that any number we move forward meets the needs that we've identified and have in place. And I think at the 1.48 funding, currently, not to speak for everybody at the table, but my consensus is that we have felt pretty comfortable with that. So coming out of that meeting, what I thought we'd do is revisit a few things. And we certainly have, Burke and I, and at the appropriate time I'll move this to Burke, has some very positive information to share as a result of ongoing efforts between the town and the Board of Ed on the insurance consolidation we've been working on for multiple years. And I believe that new information, which has just been solidified, will provide us a level of flexibility in moving forward a budget number that may help to mitigate the difference between where we are, where the Board of Finance would like us to be, and most importantly, without impacting anything that we've put in the current budget proposal in terms of programs to meet the needs of our students. So I'll touch on those various things, and I think open it up for questioning to board members. The other piece of information that became clear, I think, in our conversations with the Board of Finance are really a desire to look at more than just 1 year at a time in our budget planning and really try to tackle some of these larger issues, whether it's facilities enrollment or whatever impacting our budget planning and their setting of the mill rate on an annual basis. And that's certainly something I know we've talked a little bit about at this table that I would encourage that we collectively come together and kind of force that dialogue and really come up with some metrics that not only identify what outstanding performance is, but how we really look at economic indicators and what we identify as data points that can stay consistent over time, so that when we have ideas and we brainstorm ideas, we do it in kind of in the presence of data that's meaningful and we can use from a comparative standpoint. So that's something I look forward to talking in the future with this board about, but I think the challenges we face not only this year but into the future we need to do in a real collective way. So with that, I will put up a slide that's become pretty familiar to us throughout the process, and that's really the financial known slide. And this is an example of the major drivers that have come together to get us to the 1.48% requested increase. And I want to make clear that even though I feel it's a minimal budget increase request, if you look in the additions part, second from the bottom, the bottom program improvement cost drivers, $750,000 or a 1.16% increase. We are moving forward and supporting the district in a pretty substantial way with this 1.48% increase. We are supporting special education, not only by means of additional staff through the program leader that we've talked about for the Ready, Set, Go program, but also with paraprofessional and support staff for students we already have in district that we need to now budget for a little more appropriately moving into next year and address the increase in out-of-district tuition. So in that 750, we account for those things, and I think that's an appropriate level of resources. And we also move forward the technology on two fronts. One, appropriate staffing with the technician. As we've grown the number of devices in our district, we've had trouble keeping up with servicing those devices, and it's appropriate as we move forward and make shifts in assessment, in our curricular practices, in our teaching practices, that we can adequately respond so when our teachers go to work with our students, we have ready access. And I think that's really important to consider. And we'll have increased funding in this budget to move forward with future devices, Chromebooks, that will align us better and more appropriately for not only the Smarter Balance assessment, but classroom practices in general. So just to reiterate, at that 1.48 level, I think it's a responsible level of services to move our district forward in lieu of other challenges the town is facing. Also want to bring attention to the reason why we're able to mitigate that number. And if you look under the reductions area, you have a couple things, but I'd like to draw your attention to the decrease in the number of teaching sections. 12 sections from pre-K to 12 we're able to reduce in this budget planning process. And we're able to do that and still stay within our class size guidelines. And that is not something that we can look to achieve every year to that level. And I guess I just want to be clear on that front. We had a larger than expected decline in enrollment this current year. And when you couple that with the projected decline next year, it's almost looking at a 2-year run of how to reappropriate your staffing levels. So we were able to essentially offset the biggest budget driver, which is salary increases, with the reduction of staff. And again, making clear that it doesn't impact program in a negative way. We let our class guidelines guide our decisions on staffing levels. It's always been an important community value, and it's been an important board value, and this budget stays true to that. Any further reductions to classroom levels, which we've talked about in some of the other scenarios, would lead classes to be over the guideline. So I just wanted to restate that fact. I also wanted, Aaron, you can go to the next slide, thank you, to go back and talk about a little bit about how we got to the 1.48. Because our staff did a lot of upfront work on really looking to identify other operational efficiencies in our budget planning process. Normally, we look at class size guidelines and we make those appropriate reductions as enrollment has gone down over the course of the past few years. But we also took a hard look at transportation for planning purposes next year, with the realization that we're transporting about 450 less students than we did several years ago on our buses, and with some slight modifications to bus routes, we're able to consolidate a little bit, keep within reasonable bus run times, and take 2 buses offline to provide some significant savings. Also took a look at instructional supplies. Burke worked very closely with principals, looking at past purchase patterns over the past few years, really coming up with more of a per pupil way to analyze the purchasing of these line items, and we were able to make some significant reductions there. Also reductions in equipment. We've talked about that. Again, working closely with our building principals on prioritizing kind of must-haves from like-to-haves to kind of that next level of where we would want to go with equipment, being thoughtful on a multi-year plan to get there, but able to reduce some costs by having some real good collaborative conversations on our end. And then facilities and enrollment. That's been an ongoing study of the board, and we have a 3-year plan that we've talked quite a bit about that is going to remove the temporary space from our elementary schools as enrollment has dropped. And as we remove that space, we've seen at Tooten Hill School this past year, we absorb savings on the utilities front. We have a plan to go into the next phase of that next year. And when we relook at staffing levels of our custodial staff, and we also have retirements there, we're able to absorb 1 custodial position with the decrease in space. The whole plan is it's roughly 20,000 square feet, I think, Burke, when all is said and done with the modulars. So it's substantial space that had substantial student capacity. So point being, just to bring attention to the board again, that to get to 1.48, we really needed to take a hard look. We feel good about what we came up with, but there's considerable work in looking at areas outside of just staffing to absorb some cost savings. So this is where we get to share the good news, which I think we're excited about. And we've had ongoing efforts, not only with our collective bargaining groups, but also with the town, multi-year efforts actually, to look at the potential of an insurance consolidation and what that could do to overall cost savings. And we've received some really good news that we're just solidifying today and over the course of the next couple of days, but do have a pretty good idea of how that could impact our current budget planning. So I'm going to kind of turn this over to Burke to go through the technical pieces of this information, and then I'll talk about how that could possibly play out in the bottom line, and I think we'll open it up for any questions that people might have. Burke, go ahead.
Okay. This is a little more detail and a little more specific on the information that we received last week from the actuaries. So in the areas of pension and retirement, as well as health insurance, stepping back from it, the board's goal for several years now is to try to do things to slow that growth area so that there's more left for instruction. And we were pleased to report that with the settlement of our non-certified contracts regarding retirement, because teachers are not part of our local retirement plan, that there were 2 major areas that had been achieved through collective bargaining. The first was that we closed the defined benefit pension plans to all new hires, and working cooperatively with the town of Simsbury, created a new defined contribution retirement plan. So that has started in earnest for our staff in this current year. The other area was that the contribution for those that remain in the defined benefit plan, staff will be going from a 2% contribution up to 4% over a period of years. So what we found out last week, the good news that we found out last week was that based on the collective bargaining, if we had not achieved that increase in contribution, that we would have had a $57,644 increase over last year in what the taxpayers would have needed to put into this pension plan to keep it going. And instead, we had a net increase of about $5,500. So that was very specific news from the actuaries that was great to hear. The other area, the next slide, the other area is in regard to our self-insurance pool, which is a combination of the town and the Board of Ed staff. It has been a long-standing area of cooperation, and I believe that Tom Cook, the Director of Administrative Services, probably was his first priority when he started a few years ago that he and I have been working on. And through the Insurance Advisory Committee that is a town group of citizens that helps us work on this on a roughly quarterly basis, looking at our overall programs. And of course, with our various unions, we have achieved language that allowed us to look at consolidating our programs from 2 different carriers into 1 carrier. And we did an RFP with support of our insurance advisors, Lindbergh and Ripple, L&R Benefits now. And they did this RFP with us, and we looked at what our costs would have been versus this year versus last year. And we have fixed costs where we we pay them to pay our claims. And we are now in a situation where we are going to be moving forward as of July 1st, our next fiscal year. And collectively, the savings is between $300,000 and $400,000 in fixed costs between the town and the Board of Education. So Matt's going to share a little bit more about the impact of that on our operating budget and on our major drivers.
And before we go to that, I guess I would just say, it came up at the Board of Finance meeting, conversation about collaborative efforts between the town and between the Board of Ed. And I think this is a specific example and a pretty large-scale example of something that's very beneficial that's come out of, Burke and Tom really working closely together to attain a goal that can benefit everybody involved. Mm-hmm. So when, the next question that we had with this joint savings is, okay, in the midst of a budget planning process where we've been asked to look at some different scenarios that could be very challenging for us because they could have a negative impact potentially on programming, and I know that's something all of us want to avoid. What impact could it have on the operating side when we look at this from a planning standpoint? So we've had some ongoing conversations with Bob Lindbergh, our insurance advisor, and talked to him. And Aaron, if you can go to the next slide, which is a pretty much a revisit of what we started with. And Bob's advice to us were with the information we have here today, it's safe to say that you could eliminate the 1-year insurance increase we had in there of 2% and lower the operating budget effectively by 0.4. So which would put us at an overall a little bit over 1, which seems like a pretty low number. However, this is really a number in terms of program and services that is the 1.48 that the board has demonstrated, support for. I think, one thing we want to talk about and be wary of is we certainly want to take advantage of the savings. It's also important to note that we have some unique factors this year that are allowing us to potentially move forward at a level like this. One, again, is the enrollment, which I know I just talked about. We're not going to see the same number of sections decreased in next year's budget proposal. We've already looked at the numbers and rolling them forward. It's not a tremendously difficult thing to do, and what we do know is that after this year, the elementary schools pretty much come offline in terms of reductions because the enrollment flattens out at the elementary level. We also know any reductions we may take at the middle level this year take the middle school somewhat offline for a time period because of the teaming structure. So it's a year where the enrollment kind of lined up with all three levels of elementary, middle, and high school to allow for a kind of an even distribution of reductions that won't necessarily be there next year. We'd be taking a look more or less at the high school staffing, how it balances with all the, we have great exceptional offerings that we've talked about in our budget presentations there. So we need to know that a lot of this is the main driver offset by enrollment. The other is a one-time consolidation factor here that's extremely beneficial to both upstairs and downstairs that I think can help us collectively move forward and accomplish a goal. But it's certainly not easy to get to this level. I know our board members are aware of that, and just wanted to put that out there for discussion. But my advice to the board would be if we had this information before I presented my budget, we certainly would have rolled it in at that point. As we know, this information evolves as we move forward. And what I do feel comfortable about is that taking that line item out isn't a line item that impacts teacher relationships with students, doesn't impact student programming, does not impact the $750,000 of what we're calling program cost drivers that we have educated the board on throughout the fall as we move toward the budget process. Those things to me were extremely important to protect in this budget process. They still are extremely important for me to protect, and I know our staff up here and our administrators as well. So I think while this demonstrates a low number, it's inclusive of what we said we valued from the onset. So I feel comfortable with that. I would feel comfortable moving forward a number at this because it protects what we set out to protect, and I think also moves us forward in the area of technology. But I think it's also equally important to recognize the challenge and the hard work to get there and being that fiscally responsible. So with that, I open it up for questions to my team. I know that at the last meeting, we looked at what a 1% scenario would look like, and right away you got to resources and you got to things that would impact, and we have that handout tonight if we need to relook at it. But if we went with a budget proposal in this range, it would effectively eliminate the need to now look at a new 0.5 set of reductions, because any future reductions when we went to the Board of Finance on the 12th, we could revisit simply the list we've already talked about in public and reprioritize that list and have some in-depth conversation there. Also, knowing the fact that a budget like this essentially meets the target goal that people want to meet relative to taxes and mill rate, I personally wouldn't see a need for a budget at all to go any lower than this or even really have those conversations. That's my personal opinion. I'm not trying to speak for anybody at the table, but I think this is my best effort with my team to put forward something that meets all the needs and is incredibly responsible and takes advantage of the hard collaborative work that's been ongoing for multiple years. So the timing's kind of right, so to speak. So with that, I'm dominating a lot of airtime. I'll turn it over for any questions that people might have.
Good. Thank you. Very, very informative. With that, I'm going to open up to the board. I know several of us were at that Board of Finance meeting last week, so we did hear exactly what you and other central office administrators had heard. So, comments, thoughts.
Brooke, can you just go over again? You said the $300,000 to $400,000. That's coming off fixed costs that we have?
Right. Essentially, the way it works is we're pooling all of the monthly premiums, and we hire a vendor to pay the claims, but they're paying it from our own accounts.
Okay.
So the portion that we know we will have to pay that vendor for each year to administer our plans, and now it's 2 different vendors, are so-called fixed costs. We don't control what happens with the actual claims that happen as our staff, have health needs. They go to the providers. Those things we can't predict well. But we have these fixed costs which we know, and we can say are going to be $300,000 to $400,000 less than what they would have been if we didn't make that consolidation.
So I just wanted to clarify that is indeed what I heard you say.
So
Okay.
again, just to stress, the $300,000 to $400,000 in savings isn't just for the Board of Ed; it's combined
Right.
with the town.
Right, but we, having more employees than the
Yes,
town,
we would
have
be
the
the
bulk of
we would be
that
the we would be the
savings.
majority of that. Correct.
Good. What percentage is it out of?
Roughly
ours?
80.
80%. So we're the 80%.
We'd be roughly 80.
We're the 80%.
80%. We haven't verified that, down to the fine level with the town as to how that exact split would work, but that's the approximate.
So that makes a big difference. Other comments,
Just a
questions?
comment, obviously the savings from the carrier consolidation are great. That's very good news, no question. And I'll make the comment that we've come a long way from talking about 1% decreases where the season started. So, what I hear Matt and the team saying is we can live with a 1.05% increase. I continue to be concerned that we don't, whatever action we take on the budget doesn't end up costing our school system some of its quality, some of its ability to deliver to the taxpayer what I think homeowners expect from us. But I hear you saying that you're comfortable with where we're at.
Yes.
I'd also point out that the 1.05, I just looked up Burke's, and before Burke, David Holden's history of budget increases. That would make this year's increase, if we agree to 1.05, the lowest since we've been keeping records on that, 1981. So, and we have had the last 5 or 6 years of sub 2% increases. So I just don't know how long we can sustain that. But I guess I'm fine with proceeding on the 1.05. It sounds a lot better than a 1% decrease. So, but I think we have to reserve the right to look at our picture next year, and this isn't something that people should expect is going to be something we continue forever.
And I guess I would reiterate that, Mike, and which is why I'm trying to talk a little bit about the uniqueness of the reductions this year and the uniqueness of the consolidation, because I honestly don't see that, not that factors can't change over time, but see that baseline scenario as where we start from next year, just with the contractual rollover. I mean, if you really look at, you take a look at the financial knowns and you look at a straight rollover without the reductions, you're plus 3% just in rolling forward current programming. We can't lose sight of that, which is why I always build the slide out this way, is even when you come up with a different bottom line number, you want to show the public what it looks like to roll the organization forward status quo, and then we don't like to stay status quo. We have an eye towards innovation and improvement, and what that cost is moving forward. So I think I understand exactly where you're coming from. I am comfortable with what I have solidified in my mind as a 1.48 that's now showing up on paper as a 1 because of the uniqueness of the insurance. But it's something we need to talk openly about, which is why I encourage that conversation with the Board of Finance and trying to identify what these metrics truly are, because I do think there is some misconception about basic decline in enrollment equals decline in budget that we need to continue to talk about, because it does not flesh out that way on an annual basis.
Yeah, I think we're facing a lot of challenges, both in terms of supporting technology, as you pointed out, and I don't see that getting less intense as time goes by. The second thing is that, to a large degree, the expectations of the school system are set outside of the town of Simsbury. They're set by the federal government, the state government, in terms of requirements and mandates and things like reform that we have to, and that we have to do it without really controlling the costs of that. So anyway, look, I can support the 1.05 increase based on what you come back to us with, and let's see where we go.
I think you're right. And anyone else?
Yeah, I'll really just pick up on Mike's theme, which I think is very well stated. I think we've really triangulated in several zones that we wanted to be in. You know, Matt, when you introduced the 1.48 budget, I liked your wording, which is at 1.48, we were really responding to the need to minimize our increases. It certainly reflected baking into the budget some of the decreased pressure that downward enrollment had. But what I particularly liked about the 1.48 is it was at a level where we could take some of that decrease and reinvest it into the schools. And in particular, I'm very pleased to see us investing in special needs, which I think, you know, was a critical area, and we're effectively doing here. The other thing I really liked about the 1.48 zone is we actually did talk about what would we create anything significant if we added money back into the budget. And quite honestly, you had to add quite a bit to find anything significant. So that was a sign to me that we had kind of found that place. You know, the quest is always, what's the smallest increase that allows you to do what you want to be able to do? And I thought the 1.48 was very well zoned. To the other extent, the other zone that we're really in is, you know, where the Board of Finance was in the last conversation. And I think it was really healthy for us to actually meet with them, as opposed to kind of make assumptions in our last meeting. But they just wanted to challenge us to bring the budget as low as possible, and in particular to look at collaborative efforts with the town. And I think you have more than fulfilled this with the collaborative effort on the insurance. But secondarily, I do think we're making a statement here that we are willing to enter into conversations and want to take leadership at identifying some metrics, some benchmarking, to create some, you know, continuity of standards. And I think we're willing to engage in even more conversations around collaboration. So I think this budget, this is actually the most comfortable budget I've had in several years, I believe. Because, Mike, I think you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that we're investing in excellence. And I feel the last couple of years we've been close to not doing that. I think we're in the zone this year. We're lucky because we are able to reinvest some of the downward expenses. We're not going to be able to stay below 2% forever. But I think we're really well in the zone right here. And to your point, Mike, this is the 6th year of our budget being below 2%. That is an incredibly good faith response to fiscal responsibility, to integrating into our budget the decrease of costs with downward enrollment, while at the same time investing in excellence. We are increasingly coming down in comparison to our peer communities. And so, you know, all of those metrics are important. There is only one other year, as Mike pointed out, in our historical data where a budget increase was below 2%. It was in the early 90s. I was on the Board of Selectmen at that time. It actually was the worst financial period that Simsbury had, because if you remember, there was the Education Enhancement Act, which drove up expenses, and then the legislature cut all the funding. So I think this is really well zoned. I believe it's a very good faith response to the Board of Finance, and I anticipate that they'll be pleased, and you know, I'm pleased with where we ended up.
Thank you.
Good. Other comments?
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone else has said. I mean, last time we met, the 1.48 sounded like we'd done everything that we should have done, and you know, the additional cuts we had to make to get down to 1 just didn't make me feel comfortable. We've kind of gone through the checklist of everything that we wanted to do with the Board of Finance, with the collaboration, with the declining enrollment scenarios, and I'm comfortable with the 105.
Good.
I just think that, you know, this is, as Chris said, 6 years of a less than 2% budget. It shows that the budgets we're bringing forward, we put a lot of thought and a lot of work in it, and we don't pad them to come back and renegotiate. We put forward the best budget we can. And I think that's, you know, we've always worked to do our best right out of the gate, not to play games with it. And I think that's important for people to realize that there's no padding, there's nothing extra. We've done all that, and we're putting forward our best budget.
And I think it's important, and we got at this at our last board meeting where we presented the 1.48, to talk about the reinvestment dollars and what we've done over time with programs, with staffing, to demonstrate, even in spite of a minimal increase, what we've done. And I think when we go before the Board of Finance, or I do on March 12th, which I think is the time frame, to talk about that reinvestment again and talk about the specialized programs and unique opportunities we have at Simsbury High School, because that is what makes us different, and we're proud of what makes us different, and we need to continue to support those things, because that's been a community value and a value of the board. So.
Good. Well, I think, do you have any comments?
I feel the same way, and I think I think that conversation alone is the most important thing we can say, because we aren't reinvesting as we would like. I mean, we could do a lot of things that we would like to do for our district, but we're trying to do it responsibly and thoughtfully, and do it so that a little can make a big impact. And that's just something that really needs to be kept on the conversation path. But we've done a lot, and a lot of the things in putting in the special ed supports is a support for the whole district. It's a support for every student in the school district, and that's an important thing to say. It's not just the special ed kids, it's that the team works together and all the students can get something and be able to be educated together, which is the whole plan for our district. I think it's our mission. And our special ed services were greatly cut a few years ago.
Yep.
So we looked at it, we see where we have a need, and we're putting it back in, and I think that, again, is another responsible method of our central office and our staff.
Yeah. And I think it's been continued over 2 years, right? We put some smaller structural kind of leadership things in place last year. I think we've seen some level of improvements in those areas, and I think these services really get at the root of supporting kids and teachers, which is needed.
And it's it's all kids.
That's right.
Right. So I just will reiterate what my fellow colleagues had said, and Mr. Curtis and the administration, that next year will be a different year. And I'm glad you pointed out, Mike, since 81, I didn't realize, I didn't have a chance to look at the trifold flip, that this was...
Since before 81.
Since before 81, excuse me.
All I've got is back 81.
Okay, since before
Only
81.
back 81.
The lowest. So thank you for bringing that to my attention, but we cannot continue to do business the way that we have been, because we will not be able to sustain the excellent school system, as many of you students here before us, many of you scouts and parents, and those at home watching, pride ourselves on. And Mike, you did mention we do not know where the legislature will end up this year in terms of education coming through Ed Committee and Appropriations Committee, and what the budget will hold. And that therein, that itself lies, the elephant is in the room of what will be proposed for our school districts, not only ours, but for the other 161 school districts within the state. So that is something that really isn't unknown to us, that we hopefully will know May, June, when they pass the budget. So that is something that we, we'll keep tabs on, because that will impact for next year. All right, without further delay, I have 4 motions before us, so please bear with me. I will start with the first motion, now that we have continued comment on that. May I please have a motion to move adoption of the 2014-15 public school budget to an action item?
So, second.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. All right. So that was. Now, second motion. May I please have a motion to adopt the 2014-15 public school budget in the amount of $65 million.
That'd really be the lowest.
Really?
Just wasn't pleased with that, Matt.
You're fine by yourself.
Jeez. This is the first time in my life I've reduced it that low.
We're telling the people.
I'll start over.
Please.
May I have a motion to adopt the 2014-15 public school budget in the amount of $65,602,817, which represents the increase of $683,948, or 1.05 increase over the current budget year.
So moved.
Thank you. Second? And any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Third motion. Can I have a motion to move adoption of the 2014-15 non-public school budget to an action item?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And the final motion. Can I have a motion to adopt the 2014-15 non-public school budget in the amount of $533,737, which represents an increase of $2,338, or 0.44%? Motion?
Motion, so
Thanks.
moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thanks. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Just think it'll be important from a communication standpoint, you know, a recent communication to parents and our staff about the 1.48, that we've been supportive of the 1.48, that it's inclusive of these various things. Now that a new number is out there, I think it warrants clarification that that same level of servicing in the 1.48 is still there. So I'll work with my staff on that, because I think it could create a different perception seeing a new number without knowing kind of the nuts and bolts behind it. So I'll just say I will follow up with different stakeholders on that.
Very good.
Probably important to point out to the scouts that are in the room, or the Cubs that are in the room, and maybe people at home, that this isn't the end of the budget approval process by any means. On March 12th, as Superintendent Curtis pointed out, there will be a presentation to the Board of Finance, and you guys are welcome to come and attend that if you'd like. Then on the 10th of April, there's a public hearing at the high school's amphitheater, and on April 29th, then there will be a final hearing again at the amphitheater. So this is all part of that process. So even though we voted on it now, that doesn't make it an approved budget. It's got to go through this next process, and eventually it goes to the voters. And people in the town of Simsbury all have to go and vote whether they're vote either in favor or against, as the case may be, on both the town and the Board of Ed budget. So this is part of a much longer process.
And that vote's May 13th.
And that vote's May 13th, that's right.
Right.
Same.
Thank you.
Very good. So, and I would like to thank Superintendent Curtis
Thank you.
and Central Office Administration on behalf of the board,
Yeah,
and
the
also
principals are here today,
the administrators,
kinda in the-
the principals that are here in the audience, I
There you
think
go.
representing
Everyone.
all the schools for all your very hard and diligent work in the past several months of crafting a very responsible budget that is before the board. So we do appreciate, as always, everything that you do for your schools, for your staff, and as you can exhibit, students that are sitting here in front of you, and the parents. So we do thank you with that. All righty, with that, moving on, we are now on to our...
I just had one
Yes.
question. Did we get anywhere with potentially moving the squadron line office renovation onto the capital improvement plan?
Talk about that next time.
Yes, we did have a meeting to look at the updated renovation costs, and we have our architect working on that. And when your board's recommended capital improvement program was forwarded onto the Selectmen's office and to the town, my understanding is that will be considered as a part of their next draft that they will consider. So I believe it was
Okay.
effectively transmitted, and I know that it's
Great.
being considered.
Terrific, thank you.
All righty. We will now, thanks. We are now on to our second public audience. And with that, would anyone like to address the audience? You may do so. Now is your opportunity. Please state your name and address, and we will entertain your questions. Yes, Diana.
Hi, Diana Geisley again, 78 Hedgerow still. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Matt and to the board for this very informative discussion and really thoughtful process of looking at where you can have that savings without making those reductions. So apparently my whole speech in the beginning was for naught, but thank you anyway. But I just want to thank you because it showed that you really were thoughtful in trying not to compromise programs, reduce programs, have a quality of service, continue and grow certain areas that are needed. And so I do want to say thank you. I do have a question, actually two questions. That $300,000 and $400,000, is that a one-time saving, or is that going to be a carried over savings from year to year?
Well, you would see the impact in 1 year.
1 year,
only.
right.
So then while yes, it would be it wouldn't be another 300,000 each year. It's just
the one
really that-
time, but
really
it's
that
carried
one
over,
time.
it's a carryover
Then
savings.
that's, you're right, then that's
So
your new,
it's
that's
not a
your new
one-time
baseline.
hit that we're, okay. And then, how is this new budget increase affecting per pupil, cost per pupil number that we're looking at? Is it relatively remaining the same, or is that, I know it's because 1.05% is.
I mean, that's a calculation we recalibrate on an annual basis that's triggered off our 10-1 enrollment, so we'll actually have to see how the 10-1 enrollment comes in next year. We're projected to go down 77 students, so not as big a decline next year, a little stabilization in the incoming cohorts. It would certainly stabilize the number a bit more than what we saw this past year when we had a decline of 177 students. So.
Okay. Well, thank you again. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
and I
Anna.
really appreciate it.
Very good. And thank you for your support both before and after. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience wishing to address the board? Any questions from the Boy Scouts in front of us? We hope you understood what was going on, and we'd be happy to entertain any questions that you may have, or Scout leaders in here. So, but we're glad to see you in attendance. All right. With that, I would just like to give a thank you to Jacob Gattinger. This is his last
Yes, it is.
Board of Education meeting. In his historical, normally, after the board approves the adoption of the budget, the Board of Ed rep will roll over to the new student reps, which are in the back. There they are.
Well, Patrick Long.
Where's Patrick? Oh, Patrick.
Patrick's not here tonight,
Yeah,
but
right.
Patrick will take the seat.
That's
the
right,
next
that's right.
Yep.
Patrick, I saw the other two students there,
sorry.
so.
Yeah.
Yes. So Jacob, we would like to thank you for your 2 years of service.
Thank you, Jake.
And your undivided attention through many, many meetings here, and anything you'd like to say.
Well, I'd just like to thank all the board members. It's been a great experience, and I think, the future of education is in good hands in Simsbury, so thanks again.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very
Good luck
good.
to you.
Thank you, and good luck to you. Jacob will be graduating this year, so he will be off next year, and we appreciate all that you have done for the board, and we know you won't go far because we'll still be involving you in before you graduate Simsbury High School. And we look forward to Patrick Long to be joining us at the board, and also our two students that are in the, raise your hand so we can see you back there. Our two student juniors that have also been very instrumental in attending board meetings here and joining us. So we do appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I'd just like to put in a personal plug, having Board of Ed students here really do add a lot to Board of Education. And how long, Neil, has it been since we've had, do you remember?
I think we're at about
10
6 years,
6 years?
now of
6
student representatives. And it occurs to me we may have some future ones here
Absolutely,
in the
absolutely.
audience as well.
Absolutely. So
I
if
had
this,
one of our parents of one of our students who was on the Board of Ed come up to me the other day and tell me that he is now presently working on a Board of Ed program at where his college is.
wonderful, wonderful.
He's still in the game.
That's great.
And he doesn't even have kids yet.
That's great. So yes, your years of service as a Board of Ed student rep may catapult you into many other areas of life. So we do appreciate. Thank you. All right. With that, I would like a motion to cancel the next scheduled meeting for March 11th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Need a meeting then, since we did pass the budget tonight, we adopted the budget. Next week is March 4th. We did as a placeholder hold that if need be, but we will not need that.
Correct.
So we can erase that from our calendar. So with that being said, our next regularly scheduled meeting would have been for March 11th, but not having a meeting for that meeting.
Finance
So,
on the 12th.
and the Board of Finance is on the 12th, yes, so that's important to know.
I'll second.
All right, Tara and Mike, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, very good. So we will see you at the next regularly scheduled board meeting on March 25th?
Yes.
Is it correct? All right, with that. Before you have the new 2014-15 budget summary, so we'll just add them to our book. So, all right, with that, I'd like to thank SCTV. Thank you for your note in front of me to remind me for all of your undivided service that you give us, and for not only for those of you in front, for those of you watching at home, and the replays will be broadcast during the week. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Any discussion? Second discussion, seeing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Aye.